Outlaw Sports is brought to you by Casper Energy Services. Casper Energy Services prides itself on a culture of success.
Welcome to the show. Mike Lonsborough in Calgary and Tom Luzzi in Phoenix, Arizona. Tommy, I want to talk to you about the CFL. We're finally letting it sit in. We're not going to have CFL football this year, and everybody's sad about that. But we've all played armchair quarterback. It's not easy. We've followed this league for quite a few decades. We sometimes come across like the old guys in the Muppets sitting up high and just criticizing everything, but we love the game. It's a passion of ours. So, going into the new season, let's have 5 topics, Tom. Pick 5 and I'll pick 5. And what would you do? What would your top 5 be moving forward in the CFL?
Well, first off, Mike, I think they've got to get the collective bargaining under control. They don't have one right now. So before they change anything, they need that collective bargaining agreement in place with the players. Secondly, with that collective bargaining in place, I think that they have to sort of reinvent themselves, Mike. And what I mean by that, what they've got from a marketing standpoint isn't working, and we're seeing the results of that today. In a gate-driven league, they rely on the fan base to walk in, and it's failing. So, from an individual team standpoint, they have to reevaluate things. Now, I could go on and on for hours about what you do from that end of it, but I'm gonna let the team do it. Items like tailgating, reducing the cost of concessions where they've got 100% control of that. You know, those sort of things can help offset the player end of it. Mike, I think the players themselves have to take ownership, whether they're staying, if they're going to live here in Phoenix, Arizona and come up for the 6-7 months a year. It's 5 months if you're playing in, Toronto. But I think the fans will identify with the players if they make themselves shown in the community. And that hasn't been happening. You know, I'm going to go back to, a couple decades. My father used to call it the chicken dinner banquet, where they would travel throughout Alberta and there would be players from Edmonton, BC, and Saskatchewan that would, along with the hockey players, drive up the awareness of both the NHL and the CFL in these little tiny communities, and they developed a following. Well, that's something that's lacking within the CFL. We've talked about it. You can't identify with any of these players. Thirdly, I think the CFL has to look at, no more of these 1 or 2 year deals. The fans can't identify with people that they don't know. And lastly, I think that they have to get a partnership agreement together with the NFL. They did it years ago. I think right after the failed U.S. expansion, I think they reached out to the NFL and got some money. But they've got to have some sort of working agreement. And then lastly, I think a change in commissioner is needed. The CFL was at its most stable point when they had Jake Goddard, and Jake Goddard was there for 16 years. A great fan out in Saskatchewan, his name is Steve Borsa, says to me, he says, look, we can identify with the CFL, but we can't identify with the players themselves because we don't know who they are. And, it's filtering down from the top down, Mike. So there's a whole pile of things the CFL has to get their act together on, and it's not just 5.
Yeah, you're right, Tom. And I'm going to start off with the man at the top. And you talked about Jake Goddard. I always thought Larry Smith did a pretty decent job out of Montreal. But after that, they just seemed to be slipping and sliding, no one grabbing hold of the horn and make it their own league. And sometimes when you get owners dictating what goes on and you get strong owners like Braley, I can understand where sometimes you get a conflict of interest because some of those good old boys think they own the league, right? So they're going to get their own way. So the 2.0 CFL version, It didn't work. It never had a chance. Why in the hell are you worried about somebody in Mexico? I mean, the NFL's done that for years, trying to bring in other nations or marketing their product in other countries. And I don't think it really worked. Build up your brand. You got stuff here. So that's one point. And you want to have, my second point, not only a new commissioner, but you want to have somebody with connections. The Rock, and we talked about this last time, $15 million to buy the assets of the XFL. Why in the hell wasn't that here? They didn't even know about it. That's the most embarrassing thing about it. Why wasn't that opportunity afforded to the CFL? It should have been. Number 3, the ratio. Tommy, you and I agree with this. Talking to the coaches, they want to see it down to 5. Some diehards around the CFL do not. They said, bring in more Canadians. Well, you know what? We want the most exciting players available. 5 Canadian players in the ratio. And they said, no, we need more Canadians. We can't. Do you remember when the NHL was all Canadians compared to it now? There's no comparison. Do you think they go back to just all Canadians in the NHL? Not a goddamn chance. So that's one thing you have to worry about.
I agree. And 1,500 people go to a college game. That's the support, if that.
If, Tom.
Yes.
And the NFL tie-ins, why wouldn't this be better than NFL Europe? It's the next country to them. It's closer. They can keep an eye on it. And I love that idea of 3-year contracts, because the one and dones, who wants to do it? Now, the most important thing here, I think, in my estimation, Tom, and being in the business for as long as I was, and I know Grant Pollock's going to say you sound like an old broken record, but you cannot isolate the media. I know they want to. They get guys like Petrie coming in here and trying to control the masses. It backfires on them. They're paranoid. They've got to embrace the media, make stuff available to them, help them promote the game, help them grow it. When you close the doors and say, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, you're not allowed in the press box, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You've got to make it so the media helps build this thing for you. And they're so paranoid, oh, you can't come out to practice. Someone will see that stuff. Go back to the days of the winningest coach in the CFL. Who is that, Wally Buono? We were welcome. And again, I'm sounding like an old guy, but that's what worked. And I know TV doesn't have the same impact it used to have, or radio, or there's not as many of them, but there are more places like us, more .coms. You've got to embrace all that. Make them feel welcome, not shun them away and make them feel like losers for trying to come out and promote you. I mean, they're paranoid and they've got to stop that. That's the marketing thing. That's the number 1 step in marketing. Then they've got to engage and build up this young crowd over again, like they did when the USFL destroyed it, Tom.
Mike, I agree. I was there with you during those years when, hell, they even let John Henderson up in the press box. So at that point, they'd let anybody in. So maybe that, maybe shouldn't have happened. But you're right. I mean, I can go down press box row with Eric Bishop and Bill Powers and Terry, I'm talking Labor Day, and Terry Jones, and go right down the row. I had yourself and I had Ed Whalen beside me. There wasn't a seat to be had in that press box because everybody in Calgary was covering the Stampeders.
Yes.
Today, I can count 2 people that I see on Twitter that cover the Stampeders, maybe 3, maybe, and that's wrong. And then you've got fans that bitch and complain, but you know what? They're the ones that aren't going to the game either.
I won't name any names, but there's a certain quarterback in this town says it's time that the CFL, in particular the Stamps, start being old school and get with it and get some refreshing ideas happening to market the team.
Was that Jerry DiTilio?
I'm not saying who it was.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't that long ago.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what, Mike? They've had talent, and even during the Doug Flutie years and Jeff Garcia and Dave Dickinson, you know what? They were only pulling in around 26,000, 27,000 fans outside of Labor Day. And that's concerning. They wanted to rest on their laurels, and I'm the only one who can rest on my laurel. That's my wife's name. Outside of that, you know what? The fans aren't engaged, and they're not giving them a reason. Whether you buy a ticket and you get a free hot dog, or you get a beer or whatever it is, you've got to get. They had city transit bringing in people years ago where you didn't have to worry about parking. All of that's gone by the wayside because they're saying, look, we've got a winning product, take it or leave it. And that's kind of the Flames mentality that is filtered down to this football team.
Geo's Men's in Calgary, providing Calgarians to look their best.